It seems somewhat unfair to make a 5-hour retrospective analysis of EU4 and barely even talk about what I want from its upcoming sequel, EU5. As you probably know, a sequel to EU4 is on the horizon, and it was very difficult for me to restrain myself from talking about it in my EU4 analysis video. For months, I've been trying to ignore Project Caesar dev diaries and YouTube videos covering the development. That way my retrospective would be completely focused on EU4, not looking ahead at a hypothetical game. But now I am free to talk about this hypothetical game, so let's talk about 3 things I'm hoping for in a Europa Universalis 5. Oh, and I have an announcement coming at the end of the video. My first hope for EU5 is that we'll see more dynamic systems than EU4. This idea came up in a couple of comments I've gotten on my retrospective that said that Europa Universalis should not be a simulation because it's a game. And this comment is interesting because I've also gotten the exact opposite, that EU4 is a super accurate simulation and that's why it's a great strategy game. I kind of disagree with both of these comments because they're making some assumptions here and maybe some terminology confusion. When I say that EU4 is a simulation, I mean that it is literally making calculations over a period of time that represent phenomena. It is simulating war, it is simulating economics, etc. Every game is a simulation in this way, but EU4, because of its scale, makes more sense to be called a simulation because of how many interconnected systems there really are. And the other side of this is that no, EU4 is not accurate at all, and I don't expect it to be. What I really want from this franchise are dynamic gameplay systems that can adapt to conditions at both small and large scales. But what does that mean? It means, for example, that if I play as China and conquer the whole world, the trade should not be flowing arbitrarily towards Europe with no option of changing directions dynamically. It means that ideally, we see more variety from campaign to campaign in the possibility of things that can occur, not less variety. I think this is EU4's strongest element, but it really lacks in certain areas, and I think that EU5 would absolutely shine if it can lean into the really skilled dynamic systems that we know Paradox can create. Something that Johan Andersson, game director on EU4, said about this Project Caesar is that there is an internal project rule of no modifier stacking. As I discussed in my analysis, modifier stacking is really a core part of EU4's progression, so this really caught my attention. I agree with the sentiment here though. For a casual player, modifier stacking may not be a huge deal, but for more involved players, which, let's be honest, is a large chunk of the community, stacking modifiers can lead to metas. This happened back in 2017 with loans, where the permanent interest reduction bonuses were so powerful and attainable that most runs involved going for the same few interest reduction bonuses over and over. And yeah, metas can suck and limit creativity. I just hope the solution of no bonus stacking doesn't limit creativity even more, but I'm open-minded, so let's see what they come up with. My second hope is that Europa Universalis moves away from its Eurocentric design and narrative perspective. I know it's called Europa, guys, I know, but it's also called Universalis, right? See, I can make this argument too. My reason for wanting less Eurocentrism in the core design is really that it limits the emergent narrative possibilities of playing as really most countries in the game. If EU5 is going to continue to encourage me to play outside of Europe as much as EU4 did, I want it to at least let me control the narrative instead of being stuck in European ideas of imperialism and colonialism no matter what country I'm playing as. To be clear, I know that people like Eurocentric content in EU4. The design of European countries and their mechanics in EU5 should of course be Eurocentric because it's in Europe. But in Japan or India or Egypt, no thanks. I want every part of EU5 to act like it's the center of the universe, mechanically and narratively. So how do you do this? Well, by scrapping the static game systems and creating more emergent ones instead. I think that moving the game away from its Eurocentric core design will allow for not only a broader audience adoption, but more importantly, more dynamic playstyles and a less repetitive narrative experience. If you want to keep playing the normal Eurocentric imperialist gameplay systems, you should be able to do that. But to me, this should be just one playstyle among many, not the only viable way to play. My third hope is that the game comes out play-tested, polished, and complete. I think I speak for the gaming community when I say that people are sick of half-baked, unfinished games being released as cash grabs for the developers to kickstart a series of equally uninteresting DLCs. Paradox has a history of making extremely high quality and beloved games. This is a fact. But they also have a more recent history of releasing games that have obviously not undergone the needed playtesting, balancing, and general final polish to be considered complete experiences. Imperator Rome and Victoria 3 both released with pretty poor reception because of these problems, and although CK3 seems to have survived a bit better, it came out 2 years before Victoria 3. Whatever the past may be, I think the community would love to see a completed game that is ready for the community to enjoy, not something that needs endless patching and entire DLC overhauls just to make it playable. It's bad for the reputation of the game, it's bad for the fans, and it's really bad for Paradox. In the first ever Tinto Talk announcing the upcoming unnamed sequel to EU4, Johan described 3 pillars for their vision of what this game should have. These were a believable world, an immersive setting, and replayability. And I think that my hopes for EU5 align with these in a pretty clear way. Removing the core Eurocentrism would mean that the game is more believable and immersive because, the world is not just Europe. As for replayability, that would actually be my main pillar from this list. If the game is replayable, dynamic, interesting, and open, it will be an amazing sequel to EU4. A bonus hope that I have, and honestly don't really think will come true, is that the game is really difficult. When I first started playing EU4, it was a game that demanded adaptation to be able to succeed in its world. That's something I loved then and still love now. I think the trend of simplifying these larger budget strategy games may mean that the game is more streamlined and less deep than its predecessor, but I really hope it isn't. Looking at screenshots of the game, it seems to really have more complexity than EU4, but it's just too early to tell something like this. We'll have to get our hands on it to know for sure. And please, no more overpowered mission trees. Oh my god, if I see another one of them. I also promised an announcement, so here you go. I've been working on a retrospective analysis of Civilization 5. I plan to eventually do all the games in the Civ series, or at least 5, 6, and 7, but it made sense to start with Civ 5 as that was my first game in the series. If you want to get a look at my process, get your name in the credits, and get early access to the video, consider supporting this work on Patreon or subscribe to get notified when it comes out. If you're already a subscriber, you may have noticed that I've been making YouTube shorts from clips of the EU4 retrospective. This has been pretty successful in driving traffic to the video, especially since I don't have really many subscribers. I only rely on these to boost my long-form content to new audiences, but if enough people think this is clogging up their subscription feed, let me know and I'll start to phase them out. Thank you to everyone who watched and supported the EU4 video. The reception I've been getting has really been amazing. And if you haven't seen that video, you might be interested in checking it out next.